Aonghus Og McAnally, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of InConversation.
Quite all right.
Can you start by telling me a little about your upbringing? You were born in Portmarnock.
I was, the mean streets of Portmarnock, on the north side, where I now happily reside once again, which makes me very happy. I spent 8 years in the wilderness in exile in Kinsey, which is literally the next town over. But I don't want to speak about that. I've never lived outside of a 1.5 mile radius. I think I've lived in 5 houses.
Within
1.5 mile radius.
Okay.
It's ridiculous.
That's nice too. You must feel.
Yeah, if you're from Portmarnock, it's nice because Portmarnock people are crazy who insist on living in Portmarnock all the time. So yeah, raised in Portmarnock the whole time in a theatrical family. I am, as I often point out, a third generation actor. So my dad was Aonghus McAnally Senior, unsurprisingly, who I guess is best known as kind of an RT broadcaster, radio presenter, TV presenter, and producer, whatever else. And my mum is Billy Morton, who's an actress who was a member of the Abbey Company for a long time. And then obviously my grandparents were Ronnie Masterson, my granny, who herself had an acting career that spanned 8 decades, but who's counting? And then the obvious one was my granddad, Ray McAnally, who I would argue is one of the best actors this country's ever produced, but there you go.
Did you see them all perform?
I never saw my granddad on stage. He died when I was 9, and I never saw him on stage. But I would have seen like film and TV stuff obviously at the time, and subsequently, kind of after I finished in drama school, I went back and rewatched a lot of the old stuff, a lot of the old DVDs and stuff. And it's just like phenomenal. Like there's crazy stuff. Like there's the opening scene in My Left Foot, where it's like this ridiculous wide shot of the maternity ward of the hospital, and from miles away you just see him kind of walking down this maternity ward, which should be a nothing shot. It should be like it's a wide established shot, maternity ward, him just walking down. The second he comes on screen, it's this enormous presence. And you're going, you can't teach that, you can't learn that. That's not something you pick up in that's not something you pick up in drama school. That's just in you. So yes, it's been interesting to go back and watch a lot of this. In fact, even last summer doing what was I doing? Major Barbara in the Abbey. Killian Burke, who's a young Irish actor now based in London, was over, and kind of by chance he was watching through old stuff and was watching A Very British Coup, the TV thing, which I think was Channel 4, and he's going like, it's incredible. And I rewatched it again recently, and it really stands up. You know, it's funny because you're talking about stuff from the mid '80s. That's 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
So in the way that anything, like you look at movies from the '50s and 40s, like styles change, things date a bit, but this stuff really held up. It was amazing.
So within that, did you ever consider not being an actor?
No, come on. No, I didn't. It was just a presumption, not on the part of my parents. Like they weren't, beating me with wire coat hangers and sending me to stage school. But no, I knew from no time at all that I was definitely gonna do it. There was no question in my mind.
Was there one performance? Was there one moment that you had that you were like, yes?
No, not going to see something like It's not like my. The story here. My granny brought me to the pantomime and I fell in love.
That was me. That was me. Yeah. Lisa Lamb, who trained with. Yeah. I saw her in the pantomime and I was like, I just want to do what that girl is.
Wow.
Yeah, and even then later, I saw her when she did. We spoke about this the other day.
Wait, Sweeney Todd.
Sweeney Todd.
Yeah. She's a pretty special talent. There was no landmark moment because you were surrounded by it. Like I used to play in the Wanderley Wagon of Wanderley Wagon fame because it was at the back of RT because it was just a prop they weren't using it anymore. So I was always kind of surrounded by the business, and I think once you get exposed to it, like for good and for bad, like there's tough elements to our game. But once you get exposed to those positives, I don't know that you could ever find a situation where you went, no, I wouldn't like to do that.
Yeah.
You got it. It's too awesome.
It is. No, and so you went and trained though?
I did. I started working first. I started auditioning for stuff when I was about 11 and 12. Okay. Mercifully, I didn't get any of those.
Why did you say mercifully?
Because I would have been an obnoxious bollocks if I got any of those. I would have. I know I would have. So mercifully I didn't. There's a story told in our house that that I got very close to being in The Butcher Boy. Not The Butcher Boy that Neil Jordan eventually made, but an earlier incarnation of it, when I think the funding fell through or whatever, and they didn't end up making it. Like, allegedly, I was down to a handful of fellas for that, but that didn't happen. And I'm eternally grateful that it didn't happen. I started working at 15.
And what was your first job?
First gig was the Cuchulainn cycle, the full 5 Cuchulainn plays by Yeats that Michael Scott directed, and I got the gig because the legendary Phyllis Ryan, theatre producer and actress, would have been very good friends of the family, and they needed a young man to come and play the part of the young man who comes over to fight Cuchulainn, and she got me in for the audition. Now, I still had to audition. It wasn't a case of, hey, we know you can go and do it. So I auditioned and got the gig. Wait for a second for an edit. We play on?
Yeah,
we'll play
let's try one.
So yeah, I auditioned and got the gig, and it was brilliant because, like, you're a 15-year-old kid, you're surrounded by all these incredible. Hello.
I have to explain, we're upstairs in the Stag's Head, so there is a lot of background.
That's all right. Ambience, as the fella says. Yeah, that was amazing because you're a 15-year-old kid, and here you are working with these great actors in this amazing show, and it was a really good show. It was particularly well received. We revived it and did it again here. We toured it over to the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith in London as well. So it was great, and at exactly the same time I also did my first film, which is a movie called The Nephew that not an awful lot of people have seen, starring Dublin McAnally and Pierce Brosnan.
Yes.
And just like, so that they happened like within the space of about 2 or 3 weeks. I got news that I got both gigs.
That must have been huge.
It was insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. You're a 15-year-old kid,
Yeah.
And all you've ever wanted to do is be an actor. And now, okay, go and do a movie with Pierce Brosnan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks, I will. Do you know what I mean? But the idea that your first day on a film set is a scene opposite Donald McCann, you're going, okay, no pressure. Who was lovely, really lovely, and kind of chatted about the family and whatever else. But then we're in the middle of a break of shooting, and Mr. Pierce Brosnan is there on set because he was producing it as well. So he's there, and the director goes, "Oh, sorry, Pierce, by the way, this is Aonghus." No more elaborate introduction than that, just this is Aonghus. And he turned around and said, "Oh, great to see the McAnally tradition carrying on. Would you believe the last time I was standing on this pier, some pier down in Wicklow, so the last time I was standing on this pier was with your granddad." And I was going, "God, that's incredible," and full of chat and everything. You kind of going, this is great that he knows who I am, that we're here, I'm still a 15-year-old kid, it's amazing. And then a couple of weeks later, I was flicking through the channels late at night on TV, and what comes on the telly? Only Taffin, which is, by wide consideration, the worst motion picture ever made. But there's Taffin, and what comes on? Only the scene on the pier with Pierce Brosnan and my granddad Ray. You're going, this is amazing. And you just felt like part of that world suddenly.
So, like, if you're working and then you decide to train, many actors might not decide to do that.
Yeah, I know. I felt I had to, because I did a bit. I did a couple more shows. Maybe a bit more film. I did a short film with John Cronin, the actor. So we go back a long way. Yeah. So I did. I was working away in as much as you do when you're 15 or 16. Like, I wasn't, like I was busy, but I was still in school and whatever else. But I did, and so I'd finish school and then go and train, because, like any apprenticeship, you want to learn your craft. You want to learn what you're doing. And at the time, essentially, there was 2 options here, as far as I was concerned. There was the Gaiety and there was Trinity. And so I applied for both and didn't get the Gaiety initially. They at the time they said they were operating kind of like a traffic light system, where like a red was a please fuck off. I'm allowed to say bad words.
Yes, you are.
Okay,
yeah.
Fucking awesome. So red was a please fuck off. Orange was we'll wait and see, and green was congratulations, got a place. And they kind of put me in this orange thing. I went, okay, cool, that's fine, that's your choice. Because also the other thing to remember is I was the greatest actor in the world at this time. I was the most spectacular talent anyone had ever seen, as far as I was concerned. And then I applied for Trinity and did the worst audition any human being has ever done for anything in the history of the world. I was appalling. I got about 2 words into the monologue. I went, oh, this is shit. This is terrible. This is the worst acting anyone has ever done. And I remember I left the audition for Trinity, and I rang my mum from a phone box, because in those days we didn't have mobile phones. I rang my mum and said, listen, mum, bad news, it was absolutely appalling. I was terrible, but we'll pick ourselves up, we'll go again next year, and it'll be fine. And then went back in the afternoon to see who was called back for the afternoon sessions, and miraculously, there was my name. Funnily enough, on that same day, as I was walking down Grafton Street going to Trinity to do the audition, someone comes up and goes, "Aonghus, how are you?" I went, "Hello, strange man." He says, "No, I met you at like some, you know, those college fairs in the RDS where you go and see all the different colleges. So I met you at the college fair. You were going to like, the Welsh College of Music and Drama or something. You at that stand." And I was talking about, "Oh yeah, that's right." We chatted away. We went in, walked all to Trinity together. And you know, he auditioned, I think, like one before me, and I went in directly after him. And that man went on to become Alan Leach of Downton Abbey fame.
Wow.
Who ended up not doing the course, but I did the drama degree kind of parallel to the actor training course.
Okay, yes.
So yeah, I got called back for the afternoon session. I went, "Oh, okay." I don't know why they've done that. Clearly, they can't judge talent at all.
But you mustn't have been.
I guess they saw something. They saw something,
yeah.
A spark of something, or something they felt they could do something with. So they called me back for the afternoon, which was like very much a physical kind of movement session. Ironically enough, I think, you know, with all the hype about Fight Night and stuff that I did, I'm not a physical actor by any stretch of my imagination. No one would consider me, "Oh, there's Aonghus, this great physical actor." It's not me. It's not my strong point. It's not my interest. It's like, you know, it's not me. So I go, "Oh God, right, okay, this is going to be tough. But you've been given a second chance here that you don't deserve. You better go in and nail this." And I did. I remember get the phone call to say, before I'd even, in the middle of the Leaving Cert, got the phone call from Trinity to say, "Congratulations, you're in." And because it was outside CAO, it didn't matter what happened with the rest of the Leaving Cert. And needless to say, I got the 2 best results in the 2 exams after that when I didn't care anymore.
Yeah, of course. So that period, what was that like? What was training like for you?
Insane. It nearly killed me, but I loved, it's weird to say I loved every second of it. I did. I loved the misery of it when it was miserable, and I loved the awesomeness of it when it was awesome. It was incredible. We were a very special group of people, it has to be said, but like occasionally that happens. I was talking to my brother about this last night, and he referred to us as the class of 92. I said, "What are you talking about, you idiot? It was the class of 2002. He says, No, I mean the Manchester United class of 92, like of, you know, gigs and skulls and all this kind of stuff." And in a way, that's what we were. Just for it sometimes happens. And as a side note, I think it has happened with the gang who have just graduated from the Lear, which is kind of the natural inheritor of the old Trinity course. They too are a very special group of actors. So we went in, and you know, again, it was Lisa Lamb, Ruth Nega, me, Judith Roddy, Aaron Monaghan, whatever happened to him, you know, my best mate Brian Malarkey, Vicky Burke. Like, there was just this incredible group of people. Kerry Condon was also due to be in with us. She rocked up on day 1 to say, "Listen, I'm after being offered a movie, I'm going to go do that instead. Best of luck, I hope the course treats you all well." So she was to be part of it,
right.
but then didn't do it. And at the start there was 14 of us. Was it about 14? Anyway, we lost 1 or 2 along the way. We had one girl was thrown out at the end of first year. We had one guy who dropped out after about 3 weeks, but not before he had taken, I think, each of the girls in the class to bed at least once and then left. So that was a miraculous achievement. And we finished up with 11 of us. A very, very special group of people. And the training was brilliant. It was brutal and tough. It was hard work. I mean, it's the thing with the rest of your friends in college, you're doing like 7-hour weeks or 12-hour weeks, and you're there, you know, a quiet week is a 40-hour week in a course like that. And it's physically tough. And also you're just finding yourself, you're like, because we were also in that kind of Trinity gang, because I'd been a big fan of the years that had gone before, particularly of Brian Burrows' year.
How many years was Brian ahead of you?
Burrows was coming out as I was going in. He graduated in the summer of 99 and I went in the October of 99. And his gang with Conor Delaney and a few other heads like that, they were the first ever degree. It had moved from the 2-year diploma to the 3-year degree. They were the first batch of degree students. But it was always a much broader age range, like, you know, kind of 25 to 35. Whereas when we went in, with the exception of John Smith, who I think at the time was 40, we were all 18 and 19, which is kind of great for the college end of it, going out and partying and stuff, which we still try to do as much as was humanly possible. But I don't know how great that is for actor training. I don't know how much of the world you can know or have seen at 18. But as I've said before, like, if anyone tried to stop me training at 18, I would have killed them. I was really hungry for it. But the training was great, tough, brutal, but great, and the foundation for it. Like, it changed an awful lot about how I worked.
In what regard?
Well, I used to, when I was a kid. Someone's very excited. I'd get a script and I would read it, and I would decide in my house before you would go into rehearsals. I would decide the correct way to play that script, and then I would do that from day one of rehearsals to the last day of the performance, with almost no change or evolution or improvement or happy accidents or anything. So clearly, I've ditched that. I'm much happier when things are kind of free flowing and things change up kind of night by night. And Aaron Monaghan, we were paired as a double act in every single show we did in college, right the way through the 3 years. And like that, I remember we would just do insane stuff, like within certain confines, but like mad stuff every night, completely different, totally fresh and totally alive. I remember getting pulled aside in first year for one of these tutorials that they do, and they said to me, "You are as far wrong as you could possibly be." And I went, "Oh, okay, that's okay." And I said, "But do you think I'll get better?" And then, "Oh yeah, look, we've no fears, it'll be grand. But at the moment, you're in your own way. You're all this kind of stuff." And so it was a really useful 3 years for me to kind of get that, just to get it under your belt. And also, it's the luxury of making your mistakes in private as well. There's a lot to be said for it.
You gain confidence.
Yeah, you do. And also, you're getting cast in parts that you shouldn't be cast in, like the old rep system. I remember playing Aaron's dad and stuff. Which obviously is ridiculous casting because I think he's a year older than I am. But really useful because you go, okay, well look, here's the challenge that's been set to you. So how you got to pull this off. What are you going to do? I mean, the whole point of acting is that you're playing people who aren't you to begin with. So if your job is to pretend to be other people, then make it as big a stretch as possible.
So that's the brilliant part of college. What didn't training teach you about what came after?
Well, one of the big criticisms I had of Trinity at the time versus the Gaiety, and I've said this to Patrick Sutton a lot, is drama schools are supposed to break you down like the army. I think the Gaiety is very good at building you back up again, and I don't know that the Trinity course at that time was particularly adept at that. Looking at the gang coming out of the Lear now, which I see as a pretty straight continuation, it's a 3-year acting degree from Trinity. With much of the staff from the old Trinity days, I think they have certainly addressed that. I mean, they are young, confident, supremely talented actors coming out ready to take on the world. So I think that's been fixed. But that was certainly a problem when I was there, I would have thought. And the other thing is, and this has shifted in the last couple of years, just with the way the industry has gone, and the way kind of the global economy has gone, that thing of being a self-starter, getting up and doing it yourself. There was no question of that when I was training. It was the old style of training where you do conservatoire style training, so that you would sit and wait for the phone to ring, show up as an actor for hire, and do your job. And I think the industry here has changed hugely since then. In that, just with the way things have gone, I think for a lot of people, unless you're up and making it happen yourself, then things just aren't going to happen.
And you have certainly done that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. Look, at the end of the story is, if Steven Spielberg had been ringing me, I wouldn't have done it. I did it because I had to. Now, I've loved doing it, but I did it because I had to.
Now, we're jumping slightly ahead, but we can do that.
Sure.
Because you have done that. Fight Night. Was that the first?
Yeah, Fight Night was the first production from Rise.
And how did Rise came first and then Fight Night?
No, the other way. Sorry, this is where it gets a bit funny. Most people set up a company to put on a show.
Yeah.
I put on a show to set up a company.
Right.
I had been talking since Trinity, since leaving drama school back in 2002. It was always my intention to set up my own company.
Even in drama
Yeah,
school,
absolutely. Myself and Brian Malarkey used to talk about it all the time. That you would make the stuff you wanted to make, and only because my grandparents had Old Key Productions, which was their production company, and my parents had Ashley Productions, which was their production company. So it was kind of just, I saw that as the norm, that you did your freelance work, but also you had an avenue to make your own stuff. Because also I think it's important for, at the risk of sounding a bit poncy on it, I think it's important for artists to have a voice, to have something to say, and particularly when you're in the acting side of things, as I usually am. You can be considered an interpretive artist rather than a creative artist and all that stuff, and I think I've got something to say. What am I going to say it? So what happened was, I was getting pissed off at what was happening in Dublin. I was getting pissed off at the work that was happening in Dublin.
The work that you were doing?
No, the work that I wasn't doing, the work that other people were doing.
Okay.
Because a lot of it wasn't very good. It was lazy, it was self-indulgent, and it was getting championed. And this celebration of mediocrity pissed me all the way off.
Can you define Do
you mean name check the people I'm talking about?
No, I don't. But I mean, there are styles of acting, and there's maybe a style that is crept in that is quite filmic.
Yeah. Yeah, there is.
Which is one way of doing it, and then there is maybe another way of doing it.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that. It wasn't about the style of performance, or it was about the kind of shows that were being made, and for the purpose of sweeping generalizations, I make pretty conservative, standard theatre, conventional stories told in relatively conventional productions, broadly speaking. And so if you want to take the, as I said, for broad generalizations, if you want to take the flip side of that as being, we'll all use our own names, we'll put a mic down stage left, we'll use verbatim text of an interview I did with my granny, or that kind of stuff, okay? So that is me being flippant and dismissive, right? But but there was that kind of a thing, that there was a lot of that work going on. I didn't think it was very good. It may have been innovative and experimental and all the other words that the Arts Council wanted it to be, but my problem is that, in my opinion, and I've said it to everyone else, I can say it out loud, I think that the Arts Council has, over the last few years, placed concept over execution, and over excellence. And innovation over just hard work and making proper plays. And there has been that debate. There has been Aaron Monaghan and it is a necessary debate, and there is no. Come here. There's room for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that people shouldn't be allowed to make work, but what was pissing me off was that I felt a lot of it was lazy. I didn't feel it was genuinely innovative. I thought it was lazy and it was pissing me off. But there comes a point where you can only do so much bitching about that in the pub after rehearsals on a Friday. Like, piss or get off the pot. If you think that's not good enough, then show us what you think is good enough. So I did. And that's where Fight Night came from. I've been toying around with the idea of a GA player for a while. I had about 8 pages written, all of which were horrendous. And then the Sean O'Bag initiative came up, where it was a case of Fishamble, the Irish Theatre Institute, and the Fringe coming together, saying, we will be what I refer to as the stabilisers on the bike. We'll be kind of the support around you. You come to us with the idea, Gavin will write the show, we'll give you all the production support you need, we'll get venues and presenters in to see it so it can have a life outside. The concept being, it was Gavin's baby, Gavin's brainchild. There was about, I think, 62 or 63 arts venues, theatres had sprung up over the Celtic Tiger era, because for all their faults, Fianna Fáil did put money into the arts. The only problem was they put it in the only language they understood, which was bricks and mortar. So there's like 60 odd arts venues with no money to programme in work for their audiences, and there's a load of actors sitting on their arses with no work to go and do. So let's bring the two things together, make small scale, stripped back, tourable shows, low cost tourable shows. Actors get the work, venues get the product, audiences get the product, everybody wins. So I said, look, I'll go and pitch this idea of the GA player. And I said, but look, I changed it. And I said, I won't mention the GA. I'll leave it open-ended. I won't say which sport.
And why did you feel that was?
Because I didn't want to do it about the GA. I wanted to do it about pro wrestling. And I didn't want to say pro wrestling because I thought I'd be laughed out of the room. At least if we got in and left it open, we could have a chat about it. So I wanted to do it about pro wrestling. But I've said this before, like, the one sport I refused to touch was boxing. That just point blank, it wasn't going to happen. Of all sports, didn't matter. Tiddlywinks, pool, rugby, anything. Not boxing. First words out of Gavin's mouth when I walk into the room, we're doing this as a boxer. And I'm going, yeah, that's really interesting, because there's loads of sports we could look at. He says, yeah, we're doing a boxing. Like, yeah, because there's so many sports with lenses. No. And the only reason I didn't want to do it is because I knew I couldn't fake it. I knew I'd have to do the work.
Yeah.
And I did have to do the work, and it was miserable at times. Like, you're talking about 3 months in a boxing gym to get ready for that show.
But there's something, it's a little like tennis, there's something compelling about, because a boxer, like an actor, like what you did, a boxer carries that on his shoulders.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny, like, as the show kind of grew and as it's come back a few times and I've got more involved in the world of boxing, whatever else, the more you understand, the two things are very, very similar. I mean, and it's no coincidence that people like Liam Neeson and other guys have been pretty successful boxers in their early days, because the thing of putting in all the preparation, you've only yourself to rely on. You have to perform on a given date and perform to the best of your ability. So I've taken a lot of what I learned from the fight game and applied it back to acting and making theatre. particularly the whole thing of train hard, fight easy. I think is a wonderful motto. And the idea is if you put yourself through more in the gym than you'll ever have to face in the ring, then fight night's easy. Like walking into that ring is easy then, because he's not going to be able to do anything worse to you than you haven't already done to yourself. And I kind of take that approach to rehearsals now, where work the Jesus out of it in rehearsals. Like, just train hard. I train hard and then fight easy. Then on the night, it'll be fine, basically. If that makes sense.
It does. What did that involve? What were the practicalities of... First of all, how do you start a script? Where's your starting point?
I get ideas for shows. I try and write them. I fail miserably. I ring Gavin Kostick and I say, Gavin, I have this idea for a show. Will you make it happen for me?
So that's a collaboration then?
Yeah, that's continued on.
Okay.
And we're going to finish off the trilogy. So Fight Night was the first one. Then the last one we did back in the Fringe in September 2013 was a play called The Games People Play, which is a two-hander with the lovely Lorna Quinn, which is it's not a sequel or anything, but we know what we're doing with the three plays. We know what we're talking about and how we're talking about them. So it was part 2, and he's going to do part 3 as well. So that's how we do it. I get the idea. We kind of develop it together, the idea a bit, but then ultimately he goes off and sits down at his laptop or typewriter or whatever it is he uses, and like an old-fashioned writer writes the play.
Okay. So the burden of writing isn't...
No, I've always wanted to go and write.
Yeah.
I have tried bits and pieces. I've done some writing courses, like writing for theatre and stuff. But I think for the moment, I know that I'm not as good a writer as Gavin Kostick is. Okay. And I know that we work really well together. So why would I the only thing that ever matters for me, like ego-wise, I'd love to be written by Aonghus Ok McAnally. Oh my God, it's so amazing. Would be lovely. But I'd rather the show was right than just written by me. So I'm happy to let him do it for the moment, because he's pretty good. And also there's things like the first time he showed me the first draft of Fight Night, which is a play that kind of changed my life, if that's not a ridiculous thing to say.
In what way? And you've touched on it.
Well, control of your own destiny as an actor is such a rare thing, and Fight Night gave me that. But also it was that thing of, like I said, I was bitching about the work that was going on. If you finally do man up and go, okay, well look, this is what I think. This is what I think is good theatre. What do you think of this? And Fight Night went really well, and it won a lot of awards, but audiences loved it and critics loved it, and it went really well. And the vindication in that of going, yeah, your artistic vision for what you want to do, the kind of theatre you want to make, we like it. Fight Night has played like nearly 100 shows, all over the country and abroad, and people go mad for it. And so there's a nice vindication in that. But on day one, when he showed me the first draft, within like 2 pages or 3 pages, there was stuff from that half-written Ga play, which is an abomination. But the stuff from that half-written Ga play, that he had like 2 or 3 things within the first 2 or 3 pages, and you're going, if you're telepathically putting into this play what I would have put into the play without me having ever mentioned it, we're okay. We're on good ground here. Like, I remember turning to him, I think it was about 2 or 3 pages in, and I just stopped and I said, Gavin, would it be a terrible thing if I told you I fucking love this play? And he went, no, that'd be good. I went, okay. And then it went on. Now, I have to say the Fight Night success, huge amount of that goes down to Brian Burrows. There was no way I could have made that show without him.
The training?
No, not the training. No, it wasn't the physical stuff at all. It was the storytelling of it. There's scenes in Fight Night where I'm playing like 5 or 6 characters, but it's not written in a style where you can kind of jump back and forth. It's just written. Some of it's just in straight dialogue of like of a kind of standard family drama. You just have to play everybody from the 2-year-old boy up to the dad and the mother and the girlfriend and Dan. And that's not an easy thing to do. And I'm just looking at it going, this is not something I can perform. I don't know how to do this. But I knew that Burrows would know. And so I approached him to direct. And like I said, look, I'd been a fan of Burrows from the time that, from 15 years ago. Like, I famously used to take the half days we had from school when I was 18 in 6th year. We had a half day on a Wednesday, and I would take the train into town, get off, walk into Trinity, and hang around outside the Samuel Beckett Theatre in Trinity in the hope that I would see Brian Burrows and his mates learning lines outside, having a smoke, having a chat, whatever. And I would walk past and like stop and pretend to tie my lace, so I would have an extra 30 seconds in their presence. That's how big of a fan of them I was. And so I knew Boris could do it, and we'd worked together closely enough over the years. Approached him, he was my first and only choice. Mercifully, he was able to do it. And his way of unlocking the physical storytelling style that we used for that was just key. Like, I just couldn't have done it without him.
Okay. So out of that came Rise.
Yeah, I mean that was the launch pad for Rise. So Rise kind of existed in my head before that. Like we'd been applying to different places to get, like, there was shows we wanted to put on. We're going to do this award-winning Australian play that I still want to do if I ever get the money for it. So we'd been talking to people about getting the rights for that. We're just waiting for the one to launch us, like what's going to be the show, and kind of all the stars aligned on the show in a bag thing to go, look, we'll do this as the launch. So it was the first thing from Rise, and and very consciously we were Rise Productions, not Rise Theatre Company.
And you say we, Rise is...
We. I like to say we because it makes me sound more important, and like it's not just me and Vanity Publishing. Brian Malachy, who I trained with, is kind of unofficial co-founder and member in that. Like, we always talk about it right the way along. Look, he can't be hands-on with it, but he's now an incredibly high-flying PR guru, and so he does an awful lot in terms of publicity for us and kind of managing stuff. And he made one of the shows with us, a piece called Tear Down the Walls, which we did for the Theatre Festival a couple of years ago, which was this kind of site-specific installation performance thing. He made one of those. We kind of made it in two halves, and he made one half and I had made the other. So in my head, he's still actively involved. But I guess the reality of the we is, like, the Rise team is the Rise team from Fight Night that we've had back for that we had back for Games People Play, and we'll have again for finishing off the trilogy, which is Gavin writing, Burroughs directing, me in it, and Colin Marr designing, basically. So that's kind of the Rise team.
Okay. And within that, you have autonomy in a way that actors don't always have. So the podcasts, which we have to say was the inspiration is too fancy for the word, was the idea for these. Where did the idea for those spring from?
Pro wrestling. Very straightforward. Everything in my life goes back to pro wrestling. Men in lycra and baby oil just makes me happy. So the deal is this: there was a growing trend in the world of pro wrestling. After basically a brief history in pro wrestling, Vince McMahon, who runs then WWF, now WWE, has kind of bought up any competition that exists. So there's no real competition anymore. So it's the only place you can go to work and earn a living, broadly speaking. Like, you can work in Japan and other places as well, but in terms of the States, really, it's the only place you can go. So there were guys within that company. There's only going to be a few top slots for the guys who want to be, champ, or the theatrical equivalent for me. You're looking at, if you want to be playing Hamlet in the Abbey, there's only a few amount of slots, and there was guys who felt that they were more talented than kind of the slot they had been given, and felt that if they were given a chance, that they would be able to prove that. They felt they weren't getting a fair crack of the whip, and so a couple of guys went out of their way to kind of just impose themselves on the business and just kind of go, look, grab people's attention, go, look, here I am. So a couple of things happened. A fellow called Zack Ryder made a YouTube series of these kind of short 2 and 3 minute little comedy vignettes, and amassed this incredible following online. And then a guy called Colt Cabana, who I stole the idea for the podcast off. He has a pro wrestling podcast where he interviews wrestlers every week, and he had been let go by WWE, and this was something that he had control over, and it was part of that kind of punk DIY ethos of just, okay, well, if the powers that be aren't giving you what you perceive to be a fair crack of the whip, then go and fucking grab it. Just go and do it. So I did, because I felt I was pretty good at what I did, and I didn't feel like I was getting the opportunities I might have deserved.
And because that was, I'm jumping back a little bit, but you're an actor who I would perceive as kind of constantly busy. No, but you seem to. Were you not getting?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't getting the kind of parts I wanted to be getting, and I wasn't getting seen for some stuff. And I went, I'm just going to go and grab this. Now, again, you can't link these things. But I hadn't been in the Abbey in about 4 years. Did the podcast, and I think 2 months later I was cast in the Abbey. Okay. Now, I don't think someone in the, like Kelly Phelan in the Abbey cast department, listened to a podcast and went, oh, there's Aonghus, we've forgotten about him, let's give him a job. But, it's just that thing of being proactive and just making it happen, and also just kind of success breeding success. I don't know that it's, asking the universe to bestow wonderful gifts on you or anything.
But creates work, and you're
just being proactive. And it was that thing of going, I felt like I was very aware of what I was doing at the start. Like it was, on one level, it was the altruistic thing of promoting and supporting and celebrating Irish theatre. And the other big thing for me was, in the space of a year, both Tomás McConaughey and Phyllis Ryan had died. Kind of iconic theatre names, producers and directors and whatever else. And I was acutely aware that kind of because of my family connections, I would have known who those people were. Yeah. Not many of the people my age did, and certainly nobody younger than me did. And I went, because it's different to film, because I do work primarily in theatre, it's different. Film lasts. You can go and watch the Ray McAnally DVDs when you finish drama school now, and it's there to see. But theatre disappears. And I wanted a time capsule. I wanted to go, here's a year in the life of Irish theatre. Here's 52 episodes over 52 weeks of directors, designers, writers, actors, producers, to say, this is a snapshot of who we are at that time. But I was also acutely aware that it was an hour-long infomercial for me and Rise Productions going into very influential ears every week. Like, I wasn't stupid, and it makes sense to do that.
And was it only ever going to be a year?
Yeah, it would have killed me to keep on going. It's just one of those things. You talk about an hour-long interview format weekly. That's so like Miriam Meets, right, on RTE. You're talking about like a team of 2, 3, 4 people with researchers, full-time, whatever else. I don't have full-time researchers, it was me. And so you got like the crazy time. When I was making the podcast, I was also doing the show in the Abbey and shooting a TV show down in Galway. And if that sounds insane, it's because it fucking was. What I was doing is I was walking off stage in the Abbey at 11 o'clock at night, getting into a waiting car, being driven to Galway for 1 o'clock in the morning, learning lines for the shoot the next day from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, producing the podcast from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning, sleeping from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m, then getting down on set, shooting for the day, getting back into the car, driving cross country, walking out of the car, walking on stage in the Abbey, walking off stage in the Abbey, back into the car to cross the country again for a month. 22-hour days, which is insane.
And what show in the Abbey was that?
That was The House, the Tom Murphy play, which was just bonkers. And it was when I was shooting the 1916 thing down in Galway. Like that kind of stuff will kill you. Yeah. So I was happy to do it for a period of time, but it was only ever going to be a year. I wanted it to be a snapshot. Okay. Although I am leaving myself. Yeah. Because another thing about the year was. I wanted to kill it after a year and get out while we were on top. And also, I didn't want to be known as Aonghus the interviewer. I wanted to, if people started to associate me more with that than with the career as an actor, I would have been very concerned. But also, Ricky Gervais made 12 episodes of The Office and killed it off.
Yes.
Get out while you're on top. So I said, right, that's what I'll do. I'll do the year and I'll get out. Okay. But Ricky left himself Christmas specials. So I'm leaving the option of a Christmas special open to me at some point in the future. But the idea of going back to it as a regular weekly thing, it's just not possible. Yeah. Not with a wife and a child and a career and everything else.
Because you got married and all of this, and you did have a child.
Yeah, I did. I did.
Where did that fit in?
My daughter was 2 weeks old when I signed up for Fight Night.
Right.
So that crazy. And obviously, I was producing Fight Night. I was in it, and I was also doing another show for that Fringe, which we were devising. So I'd be working all day. I'd get home, try and see my wife and my brand new born daughter, get her to bed. It meant that almost every training session for the Fight Night or initial camp, the initial training camp, almost every training session happened after midnight. Like you'd get to 1 o'clock in the morning, daughter be asleep, I'd have finished off the work I needed to do on whatever I was doing for the 2 different shows, then push the kitchen table back, take the skipping rope out and start working. Which is about as much fun as it sounds.
Yeah.
But it had to be done. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to make it happen or you're not? Hard work.
Okay, so, and you put in that hard work. Did it? You're going on to do the third part of the trilogy. Will that situation occur again? Have you gotten to a point where balance is a little bit more present?
Not really.
Okay, because you were in Major Barbara and doing the games people play.
Yeah, I was doing both of those at the same time, and I'm the producer with Rise, so I'm doing all the production stuff as well. So it's hard. It is very hard. But the thing is, we've never got any Arts Council funding for any of the stuff we've done for anything, and that's just where the industry is at the moment. It's where the economy is, and it's where, in terms of the government putting money into it, they aren't doing it. So there's less money to go around, and the kind of, like I said, the kind of work we're making doesn't really tick a lot of the boxes for the Arts Council. So we've been flying solo, and we've been making it happen, and just kind of, essentially making what has to then be just commercially viable theatre. Which, there's no shame in that. That's absolutely fine. But it's tough. So the big thing in terms of the balance that you're talking about, if I was to get, a project grant from the Arts Council, I could just pay other people to do all the work that I end up doing. That would be the big thing in terms, and allow me to just concentrate on, effectively concentrate on being an actor when it comes to these ones. Just pay other people to do all the heavy lifting stuff that I end up doing around it.
I was going to come to that, but now that we've come to it, let's go for it.
Right.
Now, and allow me to be the dummy here.
Okay. It's usually my role, but go on.
But you've touched on. You mentioned commercially viable theatre. The one I saw the games people play in the Viking Theatre.
Yes.
And the night I was there, what was really kind of noticeable and lovely was that it was predominantly a non-theatre going audience, in the sense that most people there weren't from the industry.
Oh yeah.
How much of a problem, because it has been aired numerous times, is there something that we're generally doing wrong in failing to attract a greater scope of audiences? Or is that just the nature of the business, that it's not an entertainment people might immediately seek out?
Someone said this the other day. When you ask people, do they go to the theatre? They say, no, but I really should. I should go and see more theatre. Should? Like, I should exercise more.
Yeah.
I should eat less fried food. Like, if it's something you're supposed to do, if it's something that's good for you, that's not like, no one ever said, oh, I should go to the cinema more, or so I think there is a bit of a perception around it that it's I don't know, that it's too highbrow or whatever. I don't think so. I've had cracking nights in the theatre, and continue to have. I love going and buying tickets and seeing shows. So in terms of our job to attract audiences in, well, it is like this idea that I'll follow my own artistic vision and I'll make this show because I want to do it. Well, that's great, but in reality, it's theatrical masturbation to an extent. If it's just for you, do it in the privacy of your own home. Like you need to have an awareness that, because without an audience, theatre doesn't exist. The audience is the sole component without which theatre can't. You can go on stage without a script. You can go on stage without costumes. You can go on stage without lights. You can go on stage without actors, even if you're Beckett. But you can't go up there without an audience. So that's it's that weird thing. You get it in Arts Council applications as well. A strong track record of making work for audiences. Going, who the fuck else are you making it for? It's got so for me, absolutely, everything comes back to the audience all the time about their experience and how you make it for them. Now you do got to get them through the door in the first place, and that's not always easy.
And when you were touring, then when you toured regionally, did you get in good audiences?
It varies. Some of the venues we went to were absolutely sold out, standing ovations, everything amazing. And other places we were playing to people like close to single figures sometimes. Like it can be really up and down, and it's about getting an audience and developing an audience for these venues.
But to do that, you need to be going back, and you need to be able to.
Well, I think the venue themselves needs to be programming the work in a way that makes it enticing for people to come in. And there's a load of different factors that would make that right, like in terms of the type of work that's coming in, the price point, how regularly you're bringing theatre in versus music or comedy or anything else. Like it's a hard job to do. Some people around the country are doing a phenomenal job at it, bringing incredible top quality work to regional audiences, and other people, from my experience, other people are cashing a paycheck sitting their arse doing nothing.
Okay. Because regional theatre in England is really strong, and you've got actors who make a career out of...
Yeah, I think a huge part of that is just the population difference. I think it is. I think, you know, if Ireland has the same population as Manchester, you know, it's that thing, like, I remember I went over to see Silver Tassie in the West End, in the National recently, and it was a show on a scale that doesn't exist here, and I don't think it can exist here because we've got 4.5 million people. London has 10.
Yeah.
And, you know, and a massive influx of tourists every single day who want to go to London to see quality theatre.
And they can cast stars.
Yeah, sure
as well.
they can. Yeah,
you know, there's a greater.
So there's that. But no, I do think we have an obligation to get audiences in. Yeah, you got to try your best, and whether that just means putting, you know, a famous face on a poster, then well and good. I mean, if they can act, they can act. Go and do it. You know.
Absolutely. The rep system, the Abbey rep system.
Yeah.
Is that still viable? Is that a...
I've asked Fiach, and he says no.
Okay.
He said something really interesting to me though, which I had never considered, because I would argue that it's absolutely viable, and not only is it viable, it's essential. And the recent report kind of said, not that it needs to bring the company back, but that the balance of administrators to artists at our National Theatre is out of line and should be addressed. That is a view I would agree with. Fiach said a really interesting thing to me. He said you wouldn't get the actors. I went, what are you, nuts? Who doesn't want a full-time job in the Abbey? That'd be amazing. And I said it to an actor who should remain nameless, who, my kind of age, my generation, proper leading man, one of the best we have. I said, would you take an annual, like an 18-month contract in the Abbey in the morning? Would you take it? He went, no, probably not. I couldn't believe, my jaw dropped. And I can kind of understand it, that if you are working with the Gate and the Abbey and Rough Magic and Druid and all these different people, and you want to leave yourself open to, you know, a couple of days on Vikings here and Game of Thrones there and 2 weeks on a movie here or whatever else, that you wouldn't want to tie yourself down to it. So I think part of it may be that the calibre of actor that you would be presuming you would get and you would want to get wouldn't make themselves available for that kind of an exclusive deal. So I don't know.
Inherent to the rap system is that, yes, and okay, for at a certain age you want that calibre of actor, but the rep system allowed for younger actors to become that calibre of actor.
Well, Gary did it. Gary Hines did it. And, you know, bringing in like Don Wick.
Kind of doing it now. Again.
Yeah, that's true with the gang, which is great news for actors like me. You go, okay, so Aaron and Rory and Lombard and Marty. Okay, all right. Loads of parts for me then there. Okay. No, I mean, it can be done. Like I said, Gary Hines did it in the Abbey, bringing in people like Frank Laverty and Don Witchley and all that kind of stuff. I think pretty much fresh out of the Gaiety. And that thing where you're just making stuff all the time, like the way the Abbey used to run back in, you know, the 70s and 80s, where you're kind of putting on a lunchtime show on the Peacock, a kids show in the afternoon, an early thing here, a reading there, plus the show, you know, the show on the main stage and whatever else. Like the idea that the Peacock is dark at all, ever, is just a sin before God. And like I understand that they don't have as much money as they'd like to have in the Abbey, but here's the thing. If I have to pay my mortgage at the end of the month and my kid gets sick and I don't have the money to take my kid to the doctor, I'm going to find the money to take my kid to the doctor. If that means not paying the mortgage, I won't pay the mortgage. I'll bring my sick kid to the doctor. I don't care what you have to do in the Abbey to make the Peacock run full time, but fucking do it. Like, there is no excuse for that. End of story, ever, at any point. Rip up the carpets and sell them, but keep the Peacock going. Like, do whatever it takes. It is the engine room of that theatre. I remember being a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid sitting in the Peacock on my own when the rest of my lads were out drinking and kissing girls, having the most amazing experiences in the theatre in the world. Like just incredible. Like that period of kind of the late 90s, mid-late 90s. Loads of exciting new Irish writing going on. Because it was the engine room. It was the hub of where it was happening. And Jesus, if the Abbey don't do it, then then who is?
Yeah.
Fish Amble can only do so much.
Yeah.
Like if Fish Amble rock out 2 shows in a year, that's going to be a busy year for them, you know. So who else? Like, see, look, I mean, even Druid, who had, you know, made such a reputation of doing that in the semi-recent past. The one they just did back for the festival, I think was their first, like, you know, new writing play for like 7 years or something. So I think there's no excuse for the Abbey not having it there. So yes, that's getting off the point of young actors in the rep and whatever else. But
No,
I
it's not,
think
because
I think it can be
gonna
worked that
kind
way.
of-
Yeah.
You mentioned something the other day that we don't quite know how bad it is.
Oh, nobody knows. Genuinely, they don't. People got their head in the sand over it. The analogy I keep coming back to is like a garden hose. The tap was turned off post-crash in 2008.
And are you talking about funding?
Talking about funding, yeah, government funding. The tap was turned off. And that's fine because there was enough in the garden hose to trickle out over the last 5 or 6 years. The problem is, when that tap gets turned back on, probably not this year, but probably next year to buy the following election, which is cynical, but it's exactly what's going to happen. There'll be a little bit of a giveaway this year, and there's going to be a big giveaway the following year to buy the next election. So when that tap gets turned on, there's then going to be an 8-year airlock in that hose. So all of the shows that should have been happening over the last few years that didn't because the money was gone, that's where the young actors leaving the Gaiety or wherever for the last couple of years should have been testing the water, trying their stuff out and learning their trade on the job, right? So all those, so you're going to be in a situation where people just won't have the experience of playing the parts, but also administrators won't have had the experience because all the companies were you know, decommissioned basically. So all the guys and girls who should have been running those smaller companies to then progress up to the Rough Magics or Project or the Abbey or whatever, that pipeline or that career ladder hasn't existed for a long period of time. So the skill set is gone, the expertise is gone to an extent. People jumped ship, people moved industries. So I think people think it's bad. I think nobody knows just how bad it is. I think we are in the shits. I think it's really, really bad, and it's only going to get worse, and we're only going to realise it gets worse when things kind of turn around a bit and are good to go again, you know? So
what would you do if you had an hour with the new arts minister? What would you tell her to do?
I would tell her to radically rethink what the strategy has been over the last while, because the strategy has kind of been non-existent. This idea of, we'll try and minimise the cuts or whatever. I mean, where is the vocal opposition to that? Like National Campaign for the Arts, Theatre Forum, whoever you want. Where has the vocal opposition to that been? It hasn't. People go, well, you know, it is what it is, there's no money. That's bollocks. There is money. There is money because, you know, the schools are still running, the hospitals are still running, the roads are still being fixed. Now, obviously you want your hospitals and schools to be running, but to say that there isn't any money is a lie. Mm-hmm. There is money, there is just no value placed on the arts as an industry and as something that contributes to the society. So I think what you would do is, I mean, because you're talking about what seems like big money, but in terms of the overall budget for the nation, it is a tiny, tiny fraction. Now, you tell that to a single mother on a medical card in Mullingar who's struggling to get an SNA for her kid in school. They'll go, well, okay, it is what it is. But I think I'll tell you what I would do. I would go and, I mean, the figure that's knocked around in terms of Arts Council is that if the golden figure was always 100 million. If they got 100 million, they could do everything they wanted. Now, 100 million, I think we're down to something about 57 or something like that now at the moment. So, you know, it's a big jump. But 40 million is what's what they wasted on the Mater site for the Children's Hospital, you know, without building a brick.
And that's still not even...
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So this is what we're talking about. And it's not that that's money that then gets set on fire and burned so that wonderful, sensitive artists can follow their artistic passions. That's PAYE workers, building sets, directing shows, actors. Like, actors, for the most part, aren't particularly wealthy people. They're not going to shelve all this money into an offshore account somewhere. They're going to go and buy a pint of milk in the local shop. Yeah. That shopkeeper's then going to go and get his hair cut in the local hairdressers. That hairdresser's then going to go and buy a ticket to the Abbey, which goes into the actor's pocket and comes back around again. I would go radical. I would go absolutely not. Like the French arts minister just resigned over funding cuts. It's the Winston Churchill quote. During the war, they're going, okay, we're going to have to axe the arts budget to fund the war. And Churchill said, well, then what are we fighting for? You know, and you go, well, exactly. Like, we don't function exclusively as an economy, we are a society. And man does not live on bread alone. The problem is, you say, okay, well, here's a cancer patient who can't get off a trolley in wherever. Now, which do you want to do? Do you want to look after the cancer patient or let Aon go put on a play? If you frame the choice in those terms, even I won't say I deserve the money for the play. Of course you look after the cancer.
No, but it doesn't need to be either or.
Exactly, but the problem is that that's how it has been framed over the last while, and those who should have been most vocal in changing that from the arts community haven't. They've let it go at that. The argument has been lost to a large extent, and there's just kind of an acceptance now of, oh well, they'll just keep cutting stuff. You know? Because
there is, okay, so the cancer patient in Mullingar and then the person who goes to your show, this is going to sound very twee, but the value of what we do is the personal effect.
It's that.
You know,
there is that. I mean, I do mean man does not live on bread alone. You do need to okay. So otherwise, don't make any public sculpture anymore, because it's it's nice and it's pretty, but it's not doing any good. Well, of course, it's doing good.
Yeah.
You want to.
It's an unquantifiable.
Exactly. You're not going to shut down the museums. You're not going to shut down the galleries. Like, this is what we want as a society. Okay, but it costs. So the thing about the cancer patient, if not, like, this is a terrible example of using, but look, it is what it is. For every the sums on the Abbey, I think, are for every euro you give the Abbey, they generate 360. So what I'm saying is, if it costs £100 to fund this cancer bed or £100 to make this show, it's not an either or choice. Fund the show, which generates back the 360. You can now do 3.6 cancer beds over here. But a decision has been made amongst those who are campaigning to change things, to not try and fight it on the numbers, because they don't feel the numbers work, and also the intrinsic value of the arts is where the argument should be. I don't think so. Know your audience. Jesus Christ, if as an industry or as a sector, what's the one thing we should do? We should know our audience. And if you're talking to people who only understand facts and figures, then talk to them in facts and figures. Don't say, oh, the world will have a happy glow if we get more painters painting. Like, no, this has a serious knock-on effect for the country. I think you got it.
I always think that when they talk about consumer sentiment, me who has no idea of business things, but that is how people feel.
Yeah.
And that's all. If you have no theatre, if you don't cinema, then people. Yeah. There was a thought there that is gone, so we're going to leave that go. Coming back to the acting.
Yes.
Sorry. Yes. The tax incentives that exist for the film world.
Yeah.
Should we be thinking a little bit more outside the box? Is that a viable way of generating finance for theatre?
For theatre, I think you got a choice. Last year they cut Culture Ireland by 20%. Mm-hmm. Culture Ireland is the body that brings, strange enough, Irish culture, so artworks and whatever else, plays, musicians, whatever, around the world to showcase Ireland. And so they cut Culture Ireland by 20%, and then did a big happy photo shoot with all the artists when they came back from Edinburgh last year, because there was like an unprecedented trawl of Herald Angels and Fringe First. The biggest arts festival on the planet, and the Irish dominated, as again they have this year. You're going, you don't get to have both. You can have a cosy photo opportunity with us if you want. We'll hold our awards. We go, the land of saints and scholars, isn't it great? The artistic industry is what's going to turn this country around. Or you can cut Culture Ireland by 20%. You can't have both. Put your money where your mouth is. Don't do this bullshit of, going to the airport runway to welcome Oscar winners back if you're not going to do anything to help them get to the point where they can win Oscars in the first place. It winds me all the way up.
But Maureen Lovett said something recently, that what she does is often seen as an indulgence, and for her it is her work. And there's no actors, there's no director who, it's their work, and when you give somebody that respect, then
I do think that's the issue. I just don't think there is enough respect placed on what we do. Really, there's no value put on it.
No,
unfortunately.
And I suppose in many ways, it is when it doesn't exist that you understand its value. Which is possibly
but it just makes sense when you think of look, the knock-on effects of it's like simple things like Braveheart and Ireland being showcased around the world, and going, oh well, we should go on holidays and stuff. It does work. That exists. The idea of cultural tourism exists. It is quantifiable, and it's about, what are you trying to brand yourself as? It's not for the sunshine.
All right, so the acting.
Yes.
It's a hard question. It's a hard thing to identify because in many ways it's a haphazard process. But how do you find your way, generally speaking, into a character? When you get a script, when you go into the Abbey, what's that process for you?
The only thing I concern myself with, really, is just telling the truth. Genuinely. That's the sole focus.
And is that through knowing the script inside out and upside down, or? It's
about... it's hard to describe how you do what you do. What do I think? Yeah, it's about finding the truth of it. I mean, I'm interested. I tend to take a back seat an awful lot in shows because genuinely with me, there's no ego. I want the show to be the best it can be. I don't necessarily want for me to shine as bright as I can. And so you get that thing. I remember working on a show a while ago, and there was a guy who was playing the king, and I was playing someone a little lower down in the pecking order, and any time I was kind of deferring to him, he'd come up after me, somebody after the scene in rehearsal, go, "That was great acting today, well done, really great." And any time when the story demanded it, I would kind of take the driving wheel and kind of drive the scene. He'd come up after, I just don't know that's working. I don't know. And I go, I'm big enough and ugly enough at this stage. I can deal with that kind of stuff. But I'm happy to take a step back when the light should be on someone else. I do have a broader awareness of the overall show, and I don't know if I think that predates making stuff with Rise. I think it's just the way I am.
The way you think.
Which is why I now that I'm starting to move into directing a bit as well, it's why I really enjoy directing. But yeah, no, ultimately it's about telling the truth, about finding the truth. So I don't tend to do funny walks, or most of the characters I play tend to sound broadly like they're from Portmarnock and kind of look like me. I mean, obviously, physically there was a big shift for Fight Night in that, I cut about 20 pounds of body fat, put on about a half a stone of lean muscle, shave my head and whatever else. So that was a bit of a shift, all right. But just because it needed to be,
yeah.
It's not even about the aesthetics of it, that you have to look like a middleweight, but also that thing of just to be able to carry yourself, you move differently as a boxer. So I had to do that, but other than that, it's just about trying to find the truth in it. I don't You very rarely see a show and go, Jesus, Aonghus was unrecognisable in that, I didn't know it was him at all. I think it's usually pretty close to me, which is ironic if I'm giving out about other people playing themselves earlier in this.
Yeah, but there's a difference because what you're saying is it's honesty. It's because that is acting. We have this notion that acting is not being recognisable.
Yeah.
And yet it's more about being open, or is that what you're
funny
saying?
one. I mean, well, I'd say the Major Barber thing in the Abbey last year. I'm 18 years in the business now. That's the first time anyone ever let me play comedy, straight up comedy. It's bizarre. I only realised as I was doing it, I was going, I'm really enjoying this. Mm-hmm. So that was, there was maybe I'm doing myself a disservice. There was a big shift in that. In terms of how I carried myself. And that character was an awful lot stupider than I am. But that's fine too. Maybe I'm not giving myself the credit. I don't know. It's you take on what you need to take on for part, but ultimately it's about looking the other actor in the eyes and having that feel real. Listening properly. Listening for me is absolutely vital. Because I've worked with actors who just listen so intently to you, and I do mean literally listening, but also I mean it's like listening with your full body. Mm-hmm. And I've worked with actors who do that, and I love watching actors who do that. It's incredible to watch. I've also worked with actors who work in a magical little bubble where, honest to God, I could do a fucking backflip in the middle of the scene and they wouldn't notice. They're in their own magical world, playing their own magical part, and nothing you do is going to penetrate that at all, which is kind of really weird to work with. That's what I'm trying to do when I'm on stage.
Okay. Fight Night in one sense, but are there other parts that have challenged you? Because Fight Night was a good challenge.
Yeah, Fight Night was great.
Are there parts where you've just felt, oh...
I had to play Vershinin in Three Sisters in college, and it nearly killed me.
Why?
Because I was a 20-year-old kid who didn't know his arse from his elbow, trying to play this man in his 40s in a big beast of a play. And I was working with the director who, well, she was our acting coach. She was a thundering bitch. And I was in a bad way with it. I went up to her one day. I said, look, I am helplessly lost here. I am drowning. Give me anything, a hint, a help. Throw me a lifeline here at all. And she looked me in the eyes and she said, I'm the director. My job is to direct. You're the actor. Your job is to act. And walked away. So, now, even in a professional context, that would have been an absurd thing to say. But to say it as my acting coach in fucking drama school, you're going, oh, Jesus Christ. So that nearly killed me.
And did you was there a moment of where the clouds lifted and you...
No, I made a balls of that one. It's famously me with Ruth Nega as Masha. I had this magical moment, and she was brilliant. But we had this moment where we're doing the performance of it, and you know all the heads from the college are there, whatever else. And I'm in the middle of like one of these big long speeches that Vershinin has, and I was doing a really good job. Like this was proper acting. I was like, you're on fire here, Angel. This is good stuff. Keep going with this. And then I noticed that Ruthie was staring at me, terrified. Like a deer in headlights. And I was going, what the fuck is wrong with her? I'm doing amazing acting over here. She needs to just enjoy this for a second. And she's just looking at me. I went, why is she doing... Oh, God almighty, this is the speech from Act 3, not the speech from Act 2. Genuinely. I'm in the middle of Act 2 doing the speech from Act 3. And I went, there is no way out of this. This is like I'm skiing down a mountain and there is no way for me to stop and turn this around. I just have to see this out.
And what happened? How did you...
Well, luckily, Vershinin has all these lines about what do we chat about next, what should we discuss, and I just kind of finished the speech and just looked at Ruthie and just went, what should I say now? And she kind of salvaged it and we got through. And I got off stage and went, phew, thanks be to Jesus, that's over. Oh, Christ, now I have to go back on in Act 3 and do it again. So that was horrible. That was a bad one. No, there's been some really nice parts. Doing Burial at Thebes, Seamus Heaney's Burial at Thebes in the Peacock. Phenomenal.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I did see that.
It was just amazing because the first production that they did upstairs in the Abbey had been problematic, and I think they were doing it. For Seamus to say, look, sorry about that. We're going to give it a cracking production now. And you're working with incredible actors like Declan Conlon, Gemma Reeves, like amazing. But also they brought out a lot of like Des Cave, who was the last remaining member of the Abbey Company, was in it as well. Like incredible cast, Jane Brennan, everybody. They were all amazing. And Patrick Mason directing. You're going, okay, this is Tony winner Patrick Mason. Okay. And I remember getting the phone call about that job, saying they want to come in an audition. And it's the only time in my life this has ever happened. I got the phone call, and I'm getting that job. Not kind of I'm determined to go and get it. Just going, this is what is going to happen.
Okay.
And I worked my ass off for the audition. Like the text is incredible, as you may have noticed. Seamus Heaney can write. Like there's a reason the dude has a Nobel Prize. He's put an exceptional dramatist as well. Really good playwright. So the script was there, and I worked my ass off on it. I went in to do the audition, and 2 minutes into the audition, I started talking pro wrestling. And Holly Nikirga, who was then casting director in the Abbey, was just staring at me, sitting beside Patrick Mason, just staring, going, "What are you doing?" And so I very quickly handbraked out of that and kind of said, "Look, we'll go for it." And I played the scene and played it to Patrick, which I would never do in an audition setting, because it was just a monologue. I played it to him. And he just went, wow, I can see Andrea Ainsworth did a great job with you. Andrea Ainsworth, of course, is the voice coach in the Abbey, who'd been my voice coach in Trinity. And I went, really? Yeah. No, I mean, just in terms of how I was using the verse, I like working in verse. I've done it an awful lot. I kind of know what I'm doing with it. But that was a great part. That was one of those ones where it was a big challenge because it's big stuff. It's big Greek tragedy, so it's going to be big. And I haven't been asked to do a huge amount of that kind of emotional stuff really to that point in my career. And so stepping up and I, if I say so myself, I was pretty good in that show. And the show itself was awesome. It was just a really nice team, really nice setup. I had a great time on that. That was, as you look back on these things, that was a nice one.
Remember.
Yeah.
directors or actors whose working practice has influenced you?
That's an interesting one. I've been lucky enough to work with an awful lot of very good directors. Like Patrick, I think is brilliant. Selena Cartmel is amazing. Annabelle as well. Annabelle Cumming is like she's my kind of director. Really rigorous, really intellectual as well, I guess.
Text based.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. But tough as well. Like she knows what she wants. I had a very difficult time on the house with her. The Tom Murphy thing. We had very different opinions of what that character should be. I kind of diametrically opposed, which is tough to reconcile. So that was hard.
And how do you reconcile that?
Do what your boss says.
Jason Byrne says to say yes and then do your own thing.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, I mean, you find a happy medium, and also just it's that thing of, well, okay, you had decided in your head you want to play this character one way. That doesn't mean that was the correct way or the only way. You know, Annabelle's looking to take it in a different direction. Okay, so go there and do that, and we did, and it becomes a collaboration and a negotiation. But it was one of those ones where, whilst that was an amazing show, like a really great production, I never got to relax into it. And maybe that's a good thing. But every night out there, it felt like work. I felt like I really had to work to achieve what I was trying to do with that character. I never got a chance to just kind of sit back and let it sing.
Was that part of the character you were playing, or was it just?
No, it was just about about having to do something so different to what I had initially intended on doing.
Was that confidence?
I don't know. No, I don't think it's a confidence issue. Because I knew I was able to do what I was doing, but it didn't sit as easily with me as something else might have. Okay. I was just playing. It was just a different focus in terms of the character. So that was tough. I had a tough time on that. But then I was working with her again on Major Barbara, time in my life. I mean, I worked with Annabelle right through back, still in Trilogy. She directed one of our final year shows. I think she's an incredible director. And then it's the good thing is when you I'm a fan of Irish theatre, first and foremost, really. So, working with people like Declan Conlon or Owen Rowe or someone like Cathy Belton. Cathy's a spectacular actor and fucking hard working with it. This is the one thing, the long way I knock around the business, the one thing that I keep seeing is the harder you work, the luckier you get. There's no coincidence in that. Genuinely, all the most successful people I know are the hardest working. Okay. End of story. So it's just sharing a rehearsal room with Cathy Belton, just watching her work her magic and kind of going from when the director's going, look, you don't have to go if you go on the third or fourth pass through a big emotional scene or whatever, you don't have to give it 100% now. And she's going, I know, you're all right, and goes and smacks it 100%. You go, just caring that much about it, working that hard. Cillian Murphy in Ballyturk, it's an incredible performance from him. It's an astonishing performance. It's unlike anything else I've ever seen. It's not that he's in a different league to other actors. He's just playing a different sport. It's just not like anything else that anybody else does. Mesmerising to watch. But I don't know how much I can take or steal from that in terms of what you would replicate, because it's just a different thing. It's just a him, but massively compelling to look at.
So the film.
Yeah.
Because it's a film podcast.
Yeah. let's mention it at least.
When you work in film, it's so geeky. The essential differences for you between working in film and theatre. What do you have to shift?
I do feel more pressured on a film set, and maybe I've done a reasonable amount. Mm-hmm. But maybe it's from lack of experience. It's weird. It's that thing of performing under pressure. When they call action, you have to go. But that's no difference to getting a beginner's call when you're in the theatre. But I do feel more stress, more pressure to perform on a film set. I do like it though. I mean, my style. You're talking about theatrical styles and things being a bit more filmic or whatever else. My style and the way I work and the kind of work I like is quite filmic a lot of the time.
It's very not. I'm surprised to hear that you didn't write the games people play because it was so natural. You assume it was you.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things with that. I mean, Gavin is writing it for me. It's coming from me, like the initial spark of the idea and whatever else. So it does sit pretty comfortably. But it is about it's a combination of Gavin's writing, but also my style of playing. I try and make it as natural as possible, where possible. I mean, this theatre strong style brand that I bang on about so much. That is a very definite aesthetic across the work that we do, and so it is quite filmic. So I quite like being on a film set or doing a TV thing, but it's rare enough that I've been doing big substantial parts in movies and TV and whatever else. So the kind of camaraderie that you get on a play where you're with people for, maybe 6 weeks or up to 14 or 15 weeks for one of the big shows in the Abbey. That sense of camaraderie is harder to come by. I've done a couple. There's been a couple of movies and TV stuff where I have been around for longer, and that's nice. That's nice to play with. It's a movie we did with Owen Rowe and Rory Keane and Aunt Gemma Reeves again, and Michelle Forbes, Owen's wife, playing real life husband and wife. That was nice. That was kind of a nice substantial chunk to get at. A nice little movie too. And you start to, and Aidan Kelly was in that too. Man, Aidan was so good. So you start to get into a bit more of a rhythm and a pattern with it.
Is it a question of scale for you?
Yeah, I think it probably is. I mean, ultimately the principles are the same. It's like I was talking about, just that thing of telling the truth. Ultimately, it's still just that. You just need to be aware. Okay, so the big thing for me is, for the podcast thing, we do a lot of audio drama with Royce as well. And transposing stuff from one medium to another, there's advantages and disadvantages. There's different skills and tools and stuff that you can use. So with all this short audio drama we're doing at the moment, you no longer have the person's body language on stage in terms of that as a storytelling tool. So you've got to find other ways to do that. And there's things you can do with kind of radio drama that you can't do anywhere else, and it's great. So it's just about knowing which tools you can draw on to help tell the story. Ultimately, I'm just a storyteller. Mm-hmm. That's our job, really. And I do think it's a direct line through from the rituals of shaman and whatever else. It's what we do.
The English director Declan Donnellan.
Yes.
He has this lovely line that the value of theatre is or the arts. If Armageddon happens tonight, now I'm sure he is taking into account the business of surviving.
Yes.
But we will all sit around campfires telling stories, which is kind of fundamental. In a way.
And particularly in Irish culture, that old Shanachie style of storytelling, which is basically what fight night is, as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. It's massively ingrained in who we are, in terms of cultural memory, race memory, or whatever. Storytellers. Yes, the differences for camera, it's still the same. Scale is important, but you're still looking for the same thing. You're still looking for that eye contact and just telling the truth and really sparking off each other. Mm-hmm. That's when you know it's happening.
And when have you known that that's happened? When are those moments? Because sometimes you ask actors, or you hear great actors talking, and they can literally identify 3 times in their whole career where it was like, yes, that was it. And they're probably being unfair in themselves.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I like watching. I know some people don't like watching their stuff back. I love watching what I do, to see what's going on and say, oh, okay, use that, don't use that, whatever. I think it's a useful thing. I'm trying to go on. I don't know what I'm going to say. Here's the stuff I'm most proud of. I don't know.
But I mean, there's no harm in saying we're very critical of ourselves. We have to celebrate the good stuff.
The process of fighting it, because it's a one-man show, and because, like I said, it's that Shanachie thing where you're talking to the audience, you know when you're on it, and you know when you don't, because you don't, the thing I talk about, that connection with a scene partner, you don't have a scene partner in a solo show, so the audience become your scene partner. So that relationship is quite a sacred one. But so the more I went on with it, the more I learned to kind of, you have to, it's a give and take thing, so you kind of surf in that wave like a stand-up comedian almost, in some respects. And there's times in fight night when I knew I had them, and there's times when like a brilliant moment where you get completely lost in it. Like the last one of Fight Night that I did, I think we played down in Limerick, and I hadn't done it in a while, and I found myself welling up at a part of the show that I'd never cried at before, ever. And like this is like 100 performances in. I was going, where the fuck is this coming from? I'll just go with it, it's there. So the idea that you can be that in the moment, as they say, and kind of be surprised by your own performance and by the play that you know inside out is kind of magical. But equally, there's been times in Fight Night when I'm doing it and I know I have them in the palm of my hand and I work them. I work them in a way that I have to work. So again, it's back to pro wrestling. Pro wrestling, a lot of the language they use comes from con men because it is a con. It's like it's a fix.
Yes,
it's scripted.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
So the concept of working someone like a con man, would be working them, and so there's points when, like, very consciously, not lost in the moment, but as a skilled actor choosing to technically do some things, knowing you have them in the palm of your hand and working them over really well. And then eliciting the response that you were hoping for feels amazing, because it's not. I mean, it sounds manipulative, and in some respect it is, but it's about providing them with the experience that they deserve of the show.
But it's not manipulative. It's kind of it's illuminating the stories, the parts of the story which you think need to be heard. I mean,
yeah, it is, and that's massively satisfying. Yeah, I was good in that Buried at Thebes show. That was good. And then there was one other thing I did. There was a show called The Nose that I did with Performance Corporation, which was bonkers, absolutely bonkers. But it was the first time that I had to kind of carry, and I said to carry the show. Sorry, that the central character of the major that I was playing is the story. It's around him that the story circulates. So it's that thing of being a leading man, carrying a show. And it's the first time I had to do it, and I really enjoyed stepping up to the plate with that. Because, like I said, I'm not shy about taking a step back and giving someone else the limelight when the story demands it. So to actually think, I'm actually going to go up here and grab this by the whatever, that was nice too.
Have you any sense of the qualities people cast you for?
I got in trouble for this.
Really?
Yeah, I got in trouble with this with Kelly Phelan in the Abbey, because I think sometimes people see me as a safe pair of hands. Like a good, solid, steady, dependable pro, and not to milk the pro wrestling analogy too hard, like kind of a good, solid mid-card worker, someone who can go out and have a good match with anybody, and make good people look like stars and make average people look pretty good too. So I think I'm a safe pair of hands. I don't think people take huge risks with me all that much. Now maybe I'm responsible for that. Maybe I don't take enough risks in the work that I'm doing myself to allow people to take a risk with me.
And is that a frustration?
I guess it is. I'd love.
Are there parts you'd love to play that you don't feel?
I would love. Okay, I've got a big happy smiley head on me, and people know me as kind of Mr. Generally positive, happy-go-lucky, whatever else. So I'd love to go a good bit darker than that.
Okay.
Like I'd like the idea. This is going to sound like the weirdest thing in the world. The idea of playing a paedophile is like one of I would fucking love that. If that's not the weirdest thing that any human being has ever said. But I'd love to go there. I'd love to see what the psychological journey for me would be as an actor. And I think I could surprise people. I surprised people with Fight Night. They didn't expect that from me. But I think broadly speaking, people do see me as a safe pair of hands. Like Kelly Phelan, they give out to me for saying that. She goes, we don't see you as that. And I go, well, cool, okay, then cast me in more stuff now. I think...
Because I wouldn't associate, I mean this as a positive, I wouldn't associate you with a particular character type. I wouldn't say you're somebody who's typecast.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe I play a lot of cops. I play a lot of cops on TV and film stuff. I'd like to feel people would feel that they could take a chance and push me a bit more. I think, again, like I said about the wrestlers feeling that they weren't getting the push they deserved, or feeling that the slot they were given didn't quite match with where they felt they could be. I think there's an element of that with me. I think if people roll the dice on me a bit more, they might surprise themselves.
Okay, you've heard it here.
I am available for work. Jonathan Shanky and Lisa Richards.
Are there parts you would love to play? Are there, iconic roles or?
Owen in Translations is the big one for me.
Okay.
Translations is the greatest play of all time.
Okay.
That's not my opinion. That's a fact.
Okay.
I got in trouble in an audition. I shouldn't. I'll tell you. Dominic Trumbull of the Globe was doing Philadelphia, Here I Come Here. And I was in at the audition meeting him, and we got into a discussion as my opinion that Brian Friel is the greatest writer of all time.
He is.
He gently disagreed.
Sorry, we have ice buckets here.
He gently disagreed. And I said, no, well, you mean Friel is the best. He went, well, not everyone would agree with you. I said, I know, but they'd be wrong. And he went, well, a lot of people would think maybe that Shakespeare's probably better. I go, yeah, they would, and they'd also be wrong, and I'd fight them for it. And he went, and this is Dominic from Go from the Globe, and he went, well, I would think that Shakespeare is better. I said, and you're wrong, and I'll fight you for it. So I don't know that threatening to punch a director in an audition is the best way to go about getting jobs, but weirdly, I didn't get cast in that show.
Oh.
But my integrity and my love for Brian Friel remained intact. So yeah, Owen in translations, I would love to do.
Okay.
I'd like to have a go at Hamlet. I've no interest in Romeo, but I would have.
Romeo is not a great character. He's got no backbone.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Yeah, that's not one that does it for me. And also, I think realistically at this stage, me as Romeo would be a bit of a stretch.
Although David Tennant, he played Romeo when he was 34.
Jesus, hope for us all then. But no, I'd love a go at Hamlet.
Okay.
I'd love a go at Hamlet. It's tough, but it's a great part.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
You arranged you were the first year from Trinity to do a showcase in London.
Yeah,
which
we
is
were.
what we're doing.
Yeah, I fought for it for 3 years.
You're so embedded in Irish theatre, particularly film too. But and in many ways, you've kind of created a community with Rise.
Yeah.
Is moving abroad something ever? I know you've a child.
Yeah, I'm a wife and a child and a mortgage and all that kind of stuff. So the idea of being another Paddy off the boat and just going to London on spec to try and audition for stuff holds no appeal for me whatsoever.
Okay.
It's just not on the radar.
And did those opportunities ever come along? But
yeah, well, I got offered representation in London after the showcase we did there.
Right. Okay.
And chose not to do it. I mean, there was a lot of work lining up for me. I mean, I was very fortunate. Kind of the first kind of year and a half out of drama school, it was gig to gig to gig to
what
gig,
was
like solid
your
stuff.
first gig?
I did Romeo and Juliet pretty close after we left. I was in the Abbey later in that year. I was doing TV stuff. I was doing movie stuff. I was doing Enchanted. Like I was around that time. I think it was when I just left. I had to turn down a part in intermission, which to this day still breaks my soul, because I was too busy. I was doing like a play, a movie, and a TV thing all at the same time. And just we couldn't fit in the schedule. I had to turn it down. But yeah, that kind of first year, 18 months out, I think I was under contract for the entire first 18 months out of college. So it just made sense to be here and keep that going. Now, having said that, like if it looked like a good idea to go, or if I was going over with a show or whatever, I would there's no problem in doing that. But the idea of just being a jobbing actor over in London, it's just not on the radar for me. I've a nice career here and a nice life here, and as you say, I've also got like a wife and child with jobs and schools and everything here. So there are ties to here, but. If it was a 6-month run in the West End, would I go in the morning? Absolutely. If Peter Jackson rang and said we need you for 18 months in New Zealand, yeah, we'd do that too.
Okay.
But not the other thing.
Yes, so Rise has done radio theatre. Have you any ambitions to do film?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's logistically it's going to be tricky, just in terms of funding particularly, and the thing that we've been able to do with Rise is just kind of create enough of a track record in terms of the theatre stuff, just by will and hard work, that you then start qualifying for stuff. But without a track record from making films, it's going to be hard to make films. But yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, we're Rise Productions, we're not Rise Theatre Company. The intention always was to jump from medium to medium and kind of platform to platform.
Okay.
I would be surprised if we don't have stuff on screen by the end of 2016. I don't think we'll get there next year. but I think the following year we will. Just in terms of what we've got planned in for next year already. But it's why, look, anytime I get a chance to, like, so I've been hosting the Irish Times Theatre Awards the last 2 years, and different people have different approaches to it, do different things. I open each year with a short film. So in effect, I've produced those 2 short films. The first one we did kind of a parody on the Just Saying one that Dave Tynan did, that Catherine Kennedy produced. They very kindly let us do a version of it, and then we did a new one from scratch for this year of just kind of like any of those award show things. It's comedy skit territory.
The Just Saying was brilliant.
The Just Saying one was good.
It
was absolutely the right thing for the right time, because I was pulling my hair out, going, what am I going to do? What's bang on now? What is of the moment? And it was so hot right at that time. Because all the emigrants had come home for Christmas, and there was this story about leaving Ireland or not leaving Ireland and all this stuff. And then the awards at the very start of February, so it was at the peak of its popularity when it did it.
So was it a case that you saw Emmett Kirwan's, and then you were like, yes, I know what I'm doing? Yeah,
that was it. I said, I'm going to steal that. Spoke to Emmett, and Emmett does a cameo in it as well. So spoke to Emmett about it. He cleared it with them, said that we could do it, and we did it. So I like I said, stylistically, that kind of naturalism and that kind of filmic quality that I try and bring to the theatre pieces. The logical step is to go and try and do some film now. I think it'll probably will start with shorts.
Okay.
In the way that we're doing with the audio stuff, with a view to building up to full-scale radio plays eventually. And so equally, I think I have a couple of ideas for what I want to do for a sequence of 5 to 10 minute shorts. But just the logistics of that, it's big. So you talk, but the thing I always do with Rise is, I look after people really well when they work with us, but also I'm not afraid to call in favours. And for something like that, where it's a self-contained project in a self-contained period of time, you can call in favours.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the plan.
Best and worst advice you've ever gotten?
The best advice is from my granddad, Ray McAnally, who had 3 Best Actor BAFTAs, so I'm going to listen to him.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. This is my favourite story about him. The last one he won, obviously there's 4 nominees in the category, he wins the BAFTA. The other 3 nominees who he beat, so he was a better actor than, the other 3 nominees were Sean Connery, Jack Nicholson as the Joker in Batman, and Marlon fucking Brando. So that wasn't a bad category to win. So his advice was...
And sorry, what role did he win for?
That one must have been My Left Foot. Must have been.
Wow, gosh.
Yeah, incredible. His advice was, a consistently high standard of work over a long period of time cannot go unnoticed.
Okay.
And I think that's the way you got to look at it. I was talking to a young, fresh graduate from one of the drama schools here recently who was kind of freaking out that in the first 6 weeks hadn't been signed up to one of the major agents, whatever else. I'm going, this is a long game. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Chill out. It'll be fine. Trust me, it'll be fine. And funnily enough, another friend of mine who's a year out of drama school now, just yesterday signed with one of the big agents here in Dublin as well. So you're going, okay, great. So that can happen. So you're going, cool it down. It'll be fine. So that's, I think that's a good bit of advice. The worst advice I've ever been given was after that kind of first 18 months out of drama school, genuinely going job, and so clearly I was back to being the greatest actor of all time. We had an offer in for a TV thing, and the contract wasn't going to make sense, and logistically it was going to be a pain in the ass, and we decided to pass on it and turn it down. And I remember sitting in the agency offices of Lisa Richards with Jonathan Shanky going, look, Jonathan, say no to it. What's the word? Look at how I've been working for the last 18 months. It's not like I'm going to be sitting my arse doing nothing for the next 6 months. Needless to say, tumbleweed for the next 6 months. But I think that's okay. I don't know that that's bad advice. I'm fortunate enough now that I am in a position, not that I can pick and choose what I want to do, but I can't say no to stuff I don't want to do. Okay. And that's a beautiful luxury to have.
Yeah. It is actually true that often the only time, it's the only power you have.
Yeah, it is. It still feels weird though. My granddad, the day he died, my dad was on the phone to him. And bear in mind, he had just signed his first $1 million contract, and this is 1989, so it's a lot of money. But he's on the phone to my dad the day he died, and he said, do you know, I've already turned down 20 movies this year. This is June. He goes, I've already turned down 20 movies this year I wonder how long I can keep saying no before they stop asking me. This is a guy with 3 BAFTAs in his arse pocket, on absolutely top of his game, and that freelance ethos never really leaves you. And so I still find it hard to turn down stuff.
Okay.
Like any man who can take a job in the Abbey and a TV show in Galway at the same time clearly has trouble saying no to stuff.
But there's an anxiety. You almost feel like you're betraying yourself by saying.
Well, it's just that thing of like sitting in your bedroom as a teenager going, all I want in my life is to be an actor. Now you're getting the chance to do it. Someone goes, I want to pay you money to be an actor. And you go, no, I don't want to do that job. And look, there can be a load of reasons for that. But that's a nice luxury to have, I have to say. It does. It makes life a little bit easier.
Okay. I'm sorry, we're nearly done. And
Okay.
I'll keep you forever. Performances that have stuck with you in film or in theatre that you have seen.
I went to see Punk Rock in the Lyric in Belfast the other week. Jimmy Faye's first production up there as, not artistic director, look, I think he's going to be executive producer or whatever he is. It's probably the best show I've ever seen. Just incredible. Selena Cartmel directed again. Like, just an incredibly talented bunch of young actors, most of them fresh out of drama school. Oh, just really great. Michael Keegan Dolan's Fabulous Beast company, their production of Giselle from the festival, might be 10 years ago now. That stays with me as a phenomenal one. And in terms of film, there's a movie that Sean Penn did. Is it Mystic River? It might be. There's one where his kid's been killed or something.
It is Mystic River, and Kevin Bacon is in it.
Yeah, that sounds right. So there's a scene in that. Is it Robin Wright is playing his missus in it? Possibly. Anyway, so there's a scene with the two of them, right? And it's her scene. So the camera's on her, like it's a two-shot. He's kind of sitting behind her shoulder. But it's her scene, it's her speech, she's driving it along. And I couldn't process the scene in the cinema while I was watching it, going, there's something wrong here and I don't know what it is. It was really weird. I couldn't get a handle on it. And just before the scene finished, I got what it was. It was her scene, so the camera was on her, he was just over her shoulder. But so she was in focus, because it was set to her, whereas he was just maybe a foot or two behind her. So he was ever so slightly out of focus. But his performance was so compelling that he was like all the attention from the audience was straight to him, not to her. And it felt so weird because the camera wasn't doing it, just his performance was doing it. So you were kind of pulled to this slightly out of focus thing. It was bizarre. That's something that stuck with me from film. Kind of going, Jesus Christ, you can really reach out through the lens.
Advice to your 20-year-old self.
20-year-old Ango.
Yeah.
Don't mind her, she's a bitch, she's not a director, she's an acting tutor, she should be teaching what to do. This is advice number 1. Advice number 2 is work harder sooner.
Okay.
Work harder sooner. I can get away with an awful lot of stuff kind of coasting. I'm relatively competent, relatively talented. I know what I'm doing, I'm experienced. If I let myself or a team around me can let it happen, I can coast and kind of get away with it and be fine. That's not good enough. You know, it's just not. You've got to work harder. So I would, work harder sooner, get up off your arse sooner, make rise happen sooner. And stay in touch with Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway?
Yeah. We had a very good time together.
Really?
Yeah.
On
Ella Enchanted. Got on like a house on fire.
Oh, Ella Enchanted.
Yeah.
That was shot in...
It was here.
Was it?
Yeah. Shot that all here.
Okay, and you didn't stay in touch with her?
No, we got on really well. Like, really well.
Yeah.
Because we did this fight scene together, so we did an awful lot of fight prep for it. So
I'm sorry, I haven't seen.
It's a spectacular motion picture. It's a spectacular motion picture. If you have a 7-year-old niece, you let her watch that. No, it's nice. It's fantasy princess territory. But we got on like house on fire, and just having a really good crack, and like singing on set, and having a really good time. But then. So it cuts to the rap party. I'm going, she's Mrs. Hollywood and, whatever else. She might not remember me. We hadn't got on well, but who am I? And I went up to her at the rap party to say, hi Anne, thanks for the last few weeks we've been talking, whatever else. Didn't get a chance to open my mouth. She goes, I fucking loved you in Ploughing the Stars. You're going, she'd come to the Abbey to see me.
Wow.
And yeah, we got on very well. Yeah, so stay in touch with Anne Hathaway is the main advice to 20-year-old Ango. That would have been useful.
It would. Maybe you should still go for that line. Okay, we spoke about the challenges and the difficulties, and you've lived them, and you are living them. But why do you why do you do what you do? Like, why do you love it?
It's that thing. It's not that I can't do anything else. Like, I'm sure I could sell insurance or dig holes or whatever. But it's that thing of, it's like people get drunk and get hungover. You know that there's a lot of misery attached, and you probably shouldn't drink that much again. But the crack of having a few glasses of champagne on a night out, if you're in a place where you would drink champagne, I don't know, or pints or whatever, you forget it, like childbirth. You forget about the bad bits, you just remember the good bits. I think the people who stick with it are the people who have to. Because it would be much easier to pack it in and walk away. It's a hard business. Even when you're successful, it's a hard business. And there's no real logic to doing it. You shouldn't do it. But if you can trick yourself into not caring about that, or justify to yourself that the pros outweigh the cons, then I think the people who stick with it are the ones that have to. They don't have a choice. Like, it's like the vocation line that you hear people talk about. Yeah, I love it. I love everything about it. I love the crack around it. I love being around actors. I love being around. They're interesting people. They're great storytellers. I mean, Jesus Christ! Like, you spend an hour in Marty Ray's company. Holy God! I love being around actors. I love being around theatre people. I love being around film people. They're a different breed. Like, you know, it's that kind of, you know, travelling circus gypsy thing, outsider, renegade badass. Just, we're slightly different. We look at the world a bit differently, and they're wonderfully exciting people to be around. I love all of it, and I love that moment of being on stage. I love sharing that with an audience. And it's funny now, as I said, the more directing I'm doing as well, that I don't actually have to be on stage to do that. That I can help shape what's going to happen and know that an audience is going to get it. That's also enough. It's just great. Why would you do anything else?
And on that note, thank you very, very much, Aonghus Og McAnally.
Thank you.